accept however you're feeling right now and just do what needs doing now. Right? Like, it's just like, it's how you're feeling about it has got nothing to do with the thing that you need to do. Because and I guess that kind of goes back to the whole story thing, because all those feelings that you have about it, again, that side of it is just a fucking story that you have playing in your head. Just do what you need to do. It's not important.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte,
Exploring the challenges of the creative call
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
Confidence. That's what this is about. Confidence. Everybody struggles with it. Sometimes it's hard to get. Sometimes we don't know why we lose it. Sometimes we have it. Sometimes we don't. Different times in our lives can affect when confidence exists, when it doesn't, maybe different activities. This is interesting because, there's been a time in my life where I was really confident, and then things happen in my life, and they say your confidence got shook, or you're gun shy, or something went wrong, or maybe something happened. Mm-hmm. And then you start doubting yourself, and sometimes it's a short thing, like you're shaky for a day or two or a week or a month, and sometimes it can last years. And sometimes there's wounds maybe that haven't really been investigated or fully healed. And before I pass this on to Evan, I'll just share one thing for myself. So on the podcast, I often talk about don't be a victim. It's never a good choice, which I agree with. I don't think it is. But in my attempt to, keep my head up maybe, and not let things get me down, I have noticed that there is a tendency sometimes to skate over certain things that maybe don't get looked at, certain wounds that maybe happen. And so if you've been victimized, or if you were a victim to something or whatever, it doesn't mean that there wasn't a wound that was left. And so even though I'm saying, pick yourself up, put your head up, don't suffer about it, don't play the victim, and definitely don't look for sympathy from people. That's not going to help you. Although that might feel good, it's not going to help. Mm-hmm. In my attempt to, follow that advice, I have noticed that sometimes now I need to actually go back and I need to investigate the wound that happened from the event that never got the attention it needed, and not be a victim about it and not suffer about it. But the truth is I've actually been kind of suffering about it, and it's been hurting my confidence, but I wasn't aware of it. Mm-hmm. And I think this is one of the things, I think I'll just, before I pass it on, just the last thing I'll say, the parts that we're not aware of, that's where I think confidence really suffers. That's where I think we struggle with it, because if we were aware of it, we could just solve it and then we'd be confident again. But if you're lacking confidence, or you had confidence and then you lost it, or even if you've never really gained it, there might be a wound. And then once it's kind of healed or tended to, then it might resolve. And then all of a sudden you realize, hey, you know what? I can actually do this. One last thing, Evan. Still this is the longest introduction I've probably.
Last thing, PS.
Yeah. PS. Okay, there's the third one. So I always think of confidence like stride. And I think this is really important. So if you know the ground is going to be solid underneath you, if you know you're not going to step in a pothole, or it's not going to cave in the next step, you can have stride. You can actually move with leaps and bounds because you know that you're going to be held up on your next step. Mm-hmm. To me, that's such a good expression of confidence. When your confidence is shaky, you don't know if your next step is going to be planted. You don't know if it's going to be a pothole, if the ground's going to fall out from under you, if you're going to trip and embarrass yourself, if something bad's going to happen, if you're going to get hurt again, whatever. And this is where I'm talking about tending to that wound, where the wound has created a future you're walking into, filled with potholes and ground that may cave in. So I'll pass it on to you, Evan. That's my opener. And it was a big one, I know. But here you go. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, I mean, that was like you just dove. We're diving head first into this one. Apparently, we're not wading in. This is, but that's you entered into it with confidence, Brandon. Yeah, I think that I'm sure. I mean, confidence is definitely something we've talked about in the past. I don't know if it's something that we've directly sort of centered a conversation around, but it's a huge one. Like confident, and it's something that I think most people have struggled with or struggle with. But if it's not something that you're struggling with now, it's most people have gone through some period of time where that was challenged, right? And myself included. And what you said about it's these, was the word you used, subtle, or it was like, it's these little, or like these things that we're unaware of, these unconscious wounds or whatever that can be sort of like the worst leeches of our confidence, of some event, or maybe it was a series of events, where, maybe you had confidence in something at one point in time, but then, this one thing didn't work out with it. And then this other thing didn't work out, and this other thing didn't work out. And particularly if you're an artist, like that's like hearing no's and dealing with rejection. And especially as an artist, when you're putting your heart and soul into something, like that can start to really take a toll. And I think that when you start to notice certain behaviors and patterns, and which is where I think a lot of anxiety comes from, procrastination and things like that. These are all things that I'm definitely guilty of, like avoidance strategies. It was, I think, a term that you used before we started recording. A lot of us have these things. We have loads of ways to excuse and avoid our calling, or these things that we have really deep and powerful feelings about, and we can put them off because that confidence has been shaken. And that's a rough one. That's a rough one. But that pattern, when you notice that's a bit of a signal to just like, oh, okay, well, what the hell is this all about here, right? And sometimes knowing, where it started can definitely help. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily, but the more we can demystify a lot of these hang-ups and these impediments that we have to really pursuing what we're doing as wholeheartedly as we can, which is really one of the things that an artist needs most, is to be able to do their thing with their whole heart, right? And that's one of the nasty things about losing your confidence, is that like your heart starts to move away from the thing that you're doing, and you become less effective in the thing that you're doing, and it's a really vicious kind of a cycle. So I'm just sort of saying a bunch of, so I guess where you start to notice symptoms of where your confidence, or when your confidence might be slipping in places. But, I think that there's awareness can definitely go a long way in terms of helping you get through it. But I think that there's some other practical things as well. Like what comes to mind is Stephen Pressfield and his book, The War of Art. And, his whole thing is just like, well, doesn't matter. Just like show up and for him, he's a writer. He's like, you write, you just write every day, no matter what. And it's almost, it's so simple, but I could see that as being a very powerful thing, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you don't feel confident, right? That sort of discipline in, I'm just going to show up and I'm going to do it no matter how I feel, can be so powerful. And I think can actually be a way in which you start to find your confidence again, because you doing it despite yourself shows that you can do it. Right? Not that it's going to be perfect, and not that it's going to be, it's always going to be amazing what comes out, but that you continually show up to do it. And very often once you get going creatively, like you talk about that a lot. Getting into first gear is always the hardest part of any creative thing. And by continuing to just get through into that gear, you start to prove something to yourself. And also, how else do people become masters? That's how you become a master. You keep showing up and you keep doing it, because if you truly care about the thing that you're doing, you're going to be learning the whole way through. You start to become so intimate with your craft and your art form that there's all of these little things that you start to do that you don't even realize you're doing them, but it's because you've gained such intimate knowledge through the practice of what you're doing. That's it. I'm kind of rambling, going a lot of different directions, but the fact that word practice just came out of my mouth right now, I'm like, that's interesting. We use the word practice in like medical fields, which seems like a very strange place for that to happen, but it's like they have a practice, but it's like it's very much the same way for an artist. Like, you have a practice, right? And you continually do that practice over and over and over and over again, and until it becomes your skill becomes almost entirely intuitive. And so anyhow, just showing up very often is like one of the best things I think that you can do, showing up for yourself and showing up for the thing that you're doing.
So something that you said, I think, is really important to bring up. It's when did you interpret the thing that caused the lack of confidence? That's important. So you look at origins. I've done this. I've been a person that's looked in the past. I still do it, actually. You look in the past, you go, oh yeah, this event happened. That's what caused me to lack confidence or caused me to be shaky about this. And it's like, actually, no, that isn't true. That happened and that hurt. But you actually, if you look back, you might notice that event didn't actually shake your confidence. You might have still remained confident after that. Mm-hmm. It was another event that occurred, maybe even smaller, almost unnoticeable. But when you put the two together, or the several things together, all of a sudden you started to interpret some story, and you started to go, you know what, everybody I talk to seems to do this, and they don't like me, and so I'm not a likable person. And or I was bullied here, I was bullied there, and I was bullied here. So it's like, and and maybe you weren't even bullied, but you interpreted it as bullying. And I think this is such an important element with confidence, is that confidence it's such a soft thing. It's not like a hard and fast thing. And like, there have been moments in my life where I probably should have had my confidence rocked, but it wasn't. And I remember just kind of like grazing through it and being like, whatever, I don't care. And like unaffected, like water off a duck's back kind of idea. And then almost like the smallest thing, it was like, oh man, that really it got me. And I think the thing about confidence, I think what's important to understand about this conversation is that we have an interpretation of things. And we are the ones who decide how to interpret and how to see it. So if something goes wrong, quote unquote, we can look at that in a number of different ways. And this is something I've been actually in a practice of doing. Decided to throw that in. But this practice of, when things go wrong, instead of being like, oh, this is this horrible thing that went wrong and whatever, I'm in the practice of going, why was this meant to go wrong? And what am I supposed to learn from this? And even if I don't have the answer for what I'm supposed to learn or what's about to be good from this, is to just be in the practice of going, this happened, so something better could happen and some lesson could happen. Now, I was talking with my brother this week, and he has this really cool old car that he worked on. He put a whole new engine, this much bigger engine, and he changed out a bunch of parts, including the fuel pump and I guess the air pump or something like that. And anyway, there's several things that got changed in the engine. And this summer we took a big ride in it, and we were towing a bunch of weight with it because it's got this big, powerful engine. And it was overheating and stalling, and a trip that was supposed to be about 4 hours took us like 9 hours to get done. And we just kept stalling on the road. And then we were like, hey, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. We tried all these things to fix it. And, we managed to get there and back. And, and he was frustrated at the time. I remember he's like, I just paid all this money to put this big engine, and now my car doesn't even drive properly. I was like, it's frustrating, right? Anyway, we're talking about it. I'm like, how things go with the engine? Like, what's up now? He's like, oh, you know what? I solved it. And so it turned out that it was, the reason I brought these up was the fuel pump, and it was the air pump or whatever. Basically what was happening is the engine was running too hot and was causing it to like stall out and I guess evaporate fuel or something like that. Whatever, regardless, doesn't matter. Here's the thing. He's like, what happened was when I did the engine, I changed a lot of parts at once. And it was very hard to figure out what was causing the problem because there's so many different things changed. Had I only changed one, I would have identified it. And we were talking about it, and we were like, yeah. And like, what would you do differently? He's like, well, I put these like performance things in. And he's like, what I would do is I would just go stock, and also in the future, like maybe just do one of these things at a time, or, whatever. Anyway, we were like, yeah, but had we not gone through that painful experience and you just did it right the first time, you wouldn't have known like the whole bunch of things that he had learned. Mm-hmm. So he understands engines and builds in a way that he never understood before. He understands the parts better and all of this. We had to go through a painful experience where things were seemingly going wrong and were very frustrating. And some really valuable information came out of that, and some valuable lessons. And the thing is, it's not just about engines. Like, people go, oh, great, you learned about engines. That's nothing. But if you take that lesson and you apply it to other areas of your life, how it's relevant, you realize that lesson actually plays into a bunch of other things. And confidence is when you have experience and oh yeah, I had that experience with the engine, and what happened was there was too many things to identify or whatever. So when you approach something, you might piecemeal it. You might do it little by little as opposed to doing it all at once, just out of the fact that more can go wrong if you do everything at once. And you might start to appreciate patience. And this was a talk we had a little while ago about time. How time can be a gift, and being patient and taking it slow. So maybe something's going wrong, as an idea here, to get you to slow down, to get you to appreciate the process of putting it together. And when you do put it all together and you understand every little bit of it, you're going to have confidence because you know how each little thing works. And I think sometimes what people want is we want the spoils without the toils. Well, I shouldn't say sometimes. I think we always want the spoils without the toils. I think that's part of our flaw as a human race, is that we constantly are trying to get away with it. We want to have the things we want without having to go through the pain. And it makes sense. I don't think any of us are wrong or bad for wanting that, but I just think that that's how most of us go. And then when we get scraped, when we get, hit, when we get kind of the bad thing happens, we take it too personally, which is our next biggest flaw. I know I do this myself. I'll share one last thing. Someone, you care about a lot breaks up with you, or maybe they cheat on you or something like that. And you interpret it as, oh man, I'm not good enough. And, or like I'm not living up to it, or whatever. I'm not lovable, whatever story you interpret. And that's not true. What happened was that person had something going on in their life, because really most things that happen to us are actually not as personal as we make them. Because we made it personal, we use it and we take away from our own self, and then we lose confidence. Whereas if we could just say, wow, that sucks. That hurts. And that happened and I don't like that happened, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything about me. And if it does mean something about me, where could I improve and be better? And I do think there's a certain amount of it's good to take responsibility and try to see how you contributed to something happen, not to blame and say, oh, it's all them, it's their fault, but also not to make it about your personhood. And this is my key advice, I would say, to my younger self and to anybody out there who might have struggled with confidence or is struggling with confidence. The biggest mistake I ever made in my life was taking the bad things, quote unquote, bad things that happened and making it about my personhood and making it like it happened because I'm blah, 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 or I'm this, or I'm that, as opposed to, oh, you know what? I wasn't giving this enough attention, or I was, I made a mistake by what I was doing over here. It's not mean that I am a mistake, but I made a mistake, and separating the thing from yourself. Because I think a lot of our confidence issues come from this personalizing it in our personhood. And it's not real responsibility. That's bullshit responsibility. It's not because you're not good enough. Not good enough is not a real thing, by the way. It's a bullshit idea that you interpret and tell a story and create a world around. And I did it for most of my life. And I still do it. And it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. It's honestly bullshit. And another one I've done is, I'm not lovable. I guess I'm not lovable, And it's like, no, that's not true. Plenty of people love you. But sometimes the thing is that you just, you don't get the love you wanted at that time from that person or whatever. And you just start to build this world of I just don't add up. And it's like, no, that's your personhood. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it didn't work out. But it doesn't mean that in all cases it won't work out. It's hard for us to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. There's something that you said there, and I think I'm quoting this correctly, but Marcus Aurelius, who said, the thing that stands in the way is the way. And I was just also recently listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger on Conan O'Brien's podcast, and he said this one thing about failure, and I've never heard anyone quite put it this way before, and if somebody has, then well, apologies. But he was, from his years of experience as a bodybuilder, he said, it's like, well, what do bodybuilders do? It's like, you push yourself, you push your body and your muscles until they fail. Every day you show up and you push them until they fail. That's what you want. And he's like, but how many of us think about pushing ourselves to a point of failure? We're always trying to avoid it. But, it was like this whole sort of actually no, not just accepting failure, but that there's a part where you're actually seeking it, because it's only at that point of failure where you've pushed your limits, right? It's only at that failure point that you've really seen how far you can stretch yourself, right? So it's like you're that idea that you want to find that thing. And I think that as far as confidence goes, it's that's part of that whole thing of avoiding failure, avoiding these situations, or thinking about past situations. And as you're saying, letting that be a reflection on who you are as a person, and instead having a sense of appreciation for those events and how they stretched you as a human being, right? How they pulled things out of you, both good and bad. They taught you things about yourself and who you are, the things that you that you really want and things that you don't really want, right? And I lost it, Brandon. I lost it. It's like it's right there. It's like right there. But we always want sort of like right, that was it. It was like we want things to come easy. There we go. Maybe we'll probably skip ahead for some of this rambling that I've done, but we would take the easy way if it would happen that way, and that's like what we would all like. But again, it's like I don't even know if it is what we would really actually like deep down, for things to always be easy. Sometimes it would be nice, sometimes it would be nice, but like ultimately I think that it's like, no, but if it was always easy, I mean, just read the book Less Than Zero.
Yeah, well, that's
right. Read the book Less Than Zero. My God, Easton, Brian Ellis Easton. Yeah. And like that's a story of what happens for people who everything comes easy. It's dark. It's a really dark thing. And it's not like some crazy invention that he came up with this. It's like if you really sat down and thought clearly through about what it would be like if everything always came easy in your life and what would happen to you as a person, it's dark. It's really fucking dark. It's really not good. So, I mean, I don't know. I know this is all related to confidence. I feel like I want to bring this back somehow into like a more direct type of a thing, because I understand that we're talking about failures and difficulties and pains and challenges and things like that, and how those can wear away at our sense of confidence. And I almost wonder, is there something, because there is a naive confidence, right? Like both for you, I think, and for myself at times in my life, there's a naive confidence that you can have about certain things in your life. And sometimes things happen to you and it takes away that naivety that you have about something. And the confidence kind of like there's a new learning and experience, a wisdom that you've received, but this confidence has gone. And sometimes it's like, how do you find your way back to it? And I wonder if there's something. The question I'm asking now is there actually something that's beyond confidence? Is there something that when you come back to it, it's not. Is confidence a superficial thing? At its core, is confidence a superficial thing? And is there something bigger than that? I'm asking.
Okay, so I think there is. I mean, I think that's arrogance. I think arrogance is the superficial version of it. It's fake. It's a fraud. It's the illusion that you are confident when you're really not. One of the tests that I learned to tell if you're really confident is if you removed the thing, would you still be confident? So for example, some people they seem to have a lot of confidence, but take away the partner that's super supportive, take away the money they have, take away the job, take away whatever. And all of a sudden you'll see, well, they're not actually that confident, because that really something was a crutch of confidence. And, I know that there's some people who, they think that's what confidence is, but confidence is being okay without these things. And not to say that these things don't help, but to recognize that, hey, I'm propped up because of these things in my life, that if I didn't have them, I might not be the way I'm being. And that can help keep you in check about arrogance. Something that we talked about before the podcast started was we were talking about trust. That was something that came up. And I feel like that is a topic that we like to touch on a lot. But trust is such an important part of confidence, because a lot of what makes confidence shaky is when you lose trust in yourself and trust in others and trust in the situation or the experience or the event or whatever. And you can look at trust as well as like belief in yourself, because a belief in yourself is also like a trust or a faith in yourself. And when you remove the trust and faith, there's like, very little confidence, right? So, I do think that there are faulty interpretations of confidence, where people interpret confidence as, well, it felt good and I wasn't afraid, so I was confident. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that was probably nice, but it doesn't mean you were confident. It just means that it felt good and there wasn't a lot of adversity, and so it was easy for you. But now that it doesn't feel good and there is adversity, it doesn't feel good, and you think, oh, I lost my confidence. It's like, no, it just got hard and it just got uncomfortable. And the real reality is you don't like hard and uncomfortable. You don't like difficult. And so, a true test of confidence is actually when it gets difficult, when it gets uncomfortable, when it doesn't feel good, when it isn't easy, and you can still do it. That is where real confidence lives, in my opinion. And I think that, the Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of point to push yourself to failure, I think there's some definite truth in that, because he's saying like, push yourself to the point where you actually see where your limit is, right? And I worked with a coach for a while, and I was dedicated to trying to figure this stuff out. And he said I was the only client on his whole roster that would push myself to failure. And the thing is like, I just realized that I needed to see how far I could go. And I just had to. And it became this thing, because once you push yourself to failure, you actually stop fearing the failure. You start realizing it's like, oh, like I thought I would fail here, and I actually failed like way beyond where I failed. Like there are these moments, like we would be doing like a push-up or something like that, or some type of lift or whatever, and you just be like, no, I cannot do anymore. It's like one more, and you keep doing it, and you keep thinking, I can't, this is it, and my arms will be shaking, or my legs will be shaking, or something just fucking rattling, and it's like, and you'd be able to get another one out, and then you'd be like, hey, one more, and be like, come on, that was the one more. It's like, no, and then you got another one out, and you'd be like, wow. And eventually what would happen is you'd begin to realize is like, where I think things end is not where they end. Mm-hmm. And this is it's a great exercise, for anything, like any goal you have in your life. I mean, you could use this in dating or whatever. It's like, you go through an experience and you think, okay, well, like this is over. And it's like, well, no, it's not over. You can give it another shot. See what happens. Can you give it another shot? And it's about, sometimes it's about finding creative ways to go about it. And the other thing too is, here's another thing. Something I learned about self-esteem, and I think this to be very true. I heard that self-esteem is options. And no self-esteem is no options. And low self-esteem is very few options. High self-esteem is a lot of options. So when you're looking at doing something, if you only have one way to do it, you have low self-esteem. If you have no way to do it, you have no self-esteem. If you have a lot of ways to do it, you'll have high self-esteem. I think options are very closely related to confidence. Can I get it done in a number of ways? And you know what? I found this to be very true for me, because with making films, I'd be like, okay, if this location falls through, we'll shoot over in this location. And if that location falls through, well, here's my backup to my backup. Mm-hmm. And I'd get the movie made. And that was like a big thing, right? And it was like, I mean, I'll share an example. One of the first films I ever did, Between Floors, it was supposed to take place in an elevator. And the whole thing was this couple was caught in an elevator between floors. And I had, at my university, I had a elevator. It was all reserved. Everything was good. I was a college kid. I did not have a lot of money. And the day before filming, I'd already casted. I got professional actors and everything, but I didn't have a lot of money. I was pushed everything I could to get this thing together. And on the last day, they're like, oh, by the way, it's going to be like an $800,000. Oh, no, they said it's an $800 bill to rent the elevator. And you have to pay for a security guard, which is like $50 or $100 an hour or something. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? You said we had the elevator. And they're like, no, we talked to because it was, I don't know, some unit, whatever. They were like, no, we talked to it. We can't do it. We have to have a liaison security officer and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, I there's no way I can do this. I had no money. There was no way to do it. And even if I could get the money, getting in a day, I didn't know how at that point and whatever. So low confidence on getting money at that time. Yeah. Not so much later, but at that time. And then I said, okay, well, what are we going to do? And I ended up getting some friends who had a building to let me use their laundry room. And we changed the story so that they went away from the party and they went to kind of go fool around in the laundry room away from everybody, and the door locked from the other side and they got locked in all night. And it worked because really the whole idea of the story was you got a couple that's trapped. That was the story. Now, between floors, it kind of made sense. We had them walking down the fire escape stairs of the building, and then they find the laundry room and they go in, and then they're in, and then they kind of have their talk, and then they go to open the door and they realize, wait a minute, we're stuck, because they get fed up with each other, they get in a bit of a fight and they can't leave. And then this brings up the whole drama of their relationship. And it's kind of a cool story that way. But the point is that you adapt, and we got the movie done. And it wasn't exactly how I wanted to get it done. You know, sometimes I've even thought about redoing the movie simply because I wanted to do it the right way, you know. But the point is that I do think confidence comes from having options and trust. And I think trust in the sense that if this doesn't work, I'll find another way. I trust that I will be capable to find another way. So yeah, I mean, we're talking about building it, and we're talking about, you know, where it lives. I'm going to throw out this, Evan, and I'm by no means do I think this is the end all be all, but my contribution at this point would say you have options and you trust yourself. And I think trust can be done in many ways. It can be mostly yourself, but also you trust the people you're working with. You trust the thing you built. Do you trust the relationship you have? Do you trust, you know, a bunch of different things? And if you have a lot of options and a lot of trust, I think you'll probably have a lot of confidence. I think those are two very important ingredients in the mix. I don't know if they're all the ingredients, but I do think there are a couple that tend to be pretty consistent for me when I think about it.
There's a few things that you said in there. The thing about options is really interesting, because what is pretty apparent with that is initially when you're talking about that, it seemed like it's a matter of like resources, right? How many resources do you have? And then it occurred to me that it's like, oh, but really it's what you're talking about in my mind is more of, it's more of a perspective thing. It's more of a perception necessarily. Like resources can definitely help for sure, but there's the bulk of it is more of a perceptual shift, where it's like, where how many options can you see? How many options can you come up with? Can you sit down? You can figure out, yeah, like, well, okay, well, if this doesn't happen, then what can I do? And then what can I do? What can I do? You know, and that's a capacity that we all have. The only thing that it requires is a little bit of time and thought and attention. Like really, that's the only thing that demands, and we can figure out a whole slew of things that are essentially at our fingertips. And if we lack the resources, we might be able to figure out someone who does have resources that might be helpful in whatever it is that you're doing. So I think that that's an interesting way of looking at it. And also that capacity to respond, right? And trust has a big part in that. I think that has a lot to do with our confidence as well, right? Like it's our ability to respond to the moment, to the things that are happening in that moment. Because when I think about it, it's like so often if like your confidence is not high, you're probably spending a lot of time rattling around in your own head, right? Spinning the hamster wheel of some negative thoughts and feelings and just letting those kinds of things go, as opposed to what is the thing to do right now in this moment, right? And don't overthink it. Don't just put your whole sole focus just into doing the thing and fucking forget everything else. Forget the story that you're telling, that's going on in your head. Forget whatever your expectation is of the thing that it's supposed to do or has to do, or how things have gone before. It's like, it's all a story, right? And we talk about that a lot here. It's like, but it's worth repeating, because I think those stories just take away our ability to just respond to the thing itself, because the thing is just the thing, and if you can just take it as it is, if you can just take that chapter that you have to write on this thing, and that's it. There's nothing outside of that. There's no bill that you have to pay. There's no thing that you have to go to later. There's just the thing. Can you just put your attention to the thing and just respond to that? And I can definitely, connect that to my understanding of acting and what I teach actors, is because, and I'm guilty of this as an actor as well, is all of that work that I did at home in my bedroom on that part and whatever. I'm trying to, when I try to drag all of that stuff and hold it up to everybody in the audience, it's a complete shit show. My performance is totally fucked, as opposed to just put my focus onto this thing that's right in front of me. Just put my focus onto what's happening in this scene, this person who's talking to me, that I'm having an interaction with, that I'm having a living relationship with in this moment, and just responding to that thing, right? Then the thing is doable. And in fact, that's the only way that I can actually do the thing, is if I'm not thinking about all of this other stuff, even if it's related to the work that I was doing. I think that's one of the hardest things to learn as an actor, at least for many actors. I think that's one of the hardest things to learn, is how to fucking forget all of the work that you put into it when it's time to go.
Okay. Okay, so here's, you brought something up that was really interesting here. For one, I'll just comment on this and come back to it. Focus is another ingredient that's important in confidence. The inability to focus is going to create problems in whatever you do. If you're not focused, you're going to do things half-assed. You're not going to do them as well. You need to have your attention fully on the thing you're doing. And if you're not on the ball, I think this is a good analogy, actually. If you're not on the ball, meaning that, like, say you're playing soccer or you're playing football, if you're not on it, if your attention is somewhere else, you're going to lose it, or it's going to get taken away from you. And there needs to be a certain amount of attention to this is what matters. This is what we're on. Now, the other thing you brought up, and this is almost the more important thing. Well, important, I don't know. But here's the thing. Performing under pressure seems to be a very telling thing about confidence, because when you aren't able to perform under pressure, it kind of shows a lack of confidence, because, like I said earlier, when it becomes difficult or hard or uncomfortable, that's when people make mistakes. Also, so when I used to play soccer, we had a coach and he played in the Premier League, and he ran us and worked us so hard during tryouts. And then finally at the end of it, he'd be like, okay, now let's play. And we're all just bagged. Like, we're so tired and worn out, and we just gave everything, because it's tryouts, man. You want to do your best. And then you're playing the game and you're tired and and you got to run, and it's hard, right? And this is where you're like, well, now I'm really going to show off my skill, but I'm so tired, like it's so hard, right? And anyway, somehow I managed to make this team. But he said to us afterwards, is like, this is why I did that. I want to see how you guys perform when you're tired. I don't care how you are when you're like, you know, all peppy and ready to come to tryouts. I want to see what you guys are like when it gets hard, because that's going to be the team that wins at the end of the game. It's pretty good insight.
Yeah.
And I had a thought about this, Evan, about performing under pressure. And now, you know what, man? I think I'm forgetting.
You're going to pull one of my moves.
Yeah. It's on the tip of the...
rare. It's
oh, man. Rare. It's on the tip of the tongue. But performing under pressure... oh, that's it. So you were talking about being present in the moment. So we won the provincial cup when I was playing soccer. And performing, and that's a lot of pressure because you're at the gold medal match and all of this, and you know, and I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, man, I was thinking about the pressure our coaches were under, the pressure that we had this star striker. He was the best in the league, and he ended up scoring both goals for our team to help us pass through, like, you know, and it was just like the pressure he must have felt. And I remember he had two defensemen like man marking him the whole game. Like he was like, and for him to still manage to score a couple goals, and just the pressure, and like he knew like the weight of the team. We were really relying on him. Right. And I mean, we had a great team, but like he was a key player. He's like a Connor McDavid or a Michael Jordan, you know, he's just Wayne Gretzky, whatever. I don't know his name and stars, but he was like that for us. Right. And, I think something about pressure came up was about, you really do have to be present, because if you start thinking about, oh man, this is the cup game and we got to win, and you know, what will happen if we don't, and what will you got to be in the moment. I'm on the ball right now, and I'm making my play, and then I'm passing it off, and I'm making my run, and I'm doing my thing. And the thing is that confidence under pressure comes from, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm not at tryouts. I'm not in the Gold Cup game. I'm on the ball. And so, you know, if I could pass something on to myself actually after this is done, because I'm going to remember this, but to everybody else, I would say, yeah, you know, if you're lacking confidence or you're finding you're not performing well under pressure, get on the ball. Be present. Stop thinking about, well, what will happen if this doesn't work, and what will happen if that doesn't work. Is what's happening right now working or not working? And if it isn't working, then change it. And if it is working, then double down and keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And then you'll get to the next moment and you're going to find out. And you just have to do that from one moment to the next. And it's very much like an acting lesson as well. And you think about it. I've seen the actors come into your class, people who have never really acted, and all of a sudden they're like these confident actors. Probably because you get them present, you get them on the ball, and they stop thinking about, am I a good actor? Is this working out? When am I going to cry in this scene or some junk, you know? Yeah. And it's like, then the pressure's like kind of off of you a little bit, right? Because what is pressure, right? But a perception and interpretation, something I brought up earlier. It's interesting, man. It's kind of coming together.
Yeah. Yeah, and interestingly enough is that pressure always adds something too. I don't remember where I heard this, but I heard this somewhere where it says like the pressure is going to take something away from you in terms of what you had prepared or rehearsed or something like that. It's like it's going to take something away, but it's going to give something too.
Yeah, I think that's an important point.
Yeah, it's going to...
Sometimes it does matter because it makes it important.
Yeah, and so there's there's a new relationship to be found with pressure, and how do we respond to pressure, and just, you know, sometimes just being able to take that moment to reframe yourself. It's like you're feeling the pressure, and maybe your MO is to really get in your head about it and start to go in some sort of a spiral, and just be like, oh, is this going to fuck up something whatever. It's like, yeah, it might, but it's going to give something too that you don't necessarily know what that is. Right. And it's like, oh, okay. So it's like just understanding that you haven't really gained or lost anything necessarily. Right. Like you're still on an even keel with that. There was something else that popped into my mind that one of my acting teachers told me. I think he used to actually have this hanging up as a sign in his classroom as well. And it said something like, know your purpose, accept your feelings, do what needs doing. And, you know, it's interesting that that's like popping into my head now, because he had a bunch of them posted around, and you know, it was like, yeah, that's a good one, but it wasn't like one that I super connected with. But in this moment, it's like rushing into my mind. And yeah, there's something about that where it's like, it's in a way where it's like, it's got nothing to do with your confidence, right? This has got nothing to do with your confidence. What is the thing that you need to do? What is the thing that you feel called to do? You know it? Yeah, you got it? Okay. Accept however you're feeling right now and just do what needs doing now. Right? Like, it's just like, it's how you're feeling about it has got nothing to do with the thing that you need to do. Because yeah, and I guess that kind of goes back to the whole story thing, because all those feelings that you have about it, again, that side of it is just a fucking story that you have playing in your head. Just do what you need to do. It's not important.
Okay, you know what? You hit on something, because this is interesting. It's coming back. So earlier I was saying confidence gets shaken because it doesn't feel good anymore. And you felt confident because it felt good and it was easy. And that just struck me. I'm like, that's right. Because when confidence feels good, it's bullshit. Because now your actions are based on how they feel. And real confidence comes from when you can do the thing whether it feels good or not, and when it feels bad or not. And I think this is such an important thing, because I'm thinking about, I made the team with the coach that pushed us until we were tired. And I was tired. But I wanted to make the team, and I love the game. And it didn't matter if it felt good or not. I was going to do the best that I could. And I think the players that gave in to the tiredness and they made the excuses, you know, they didn't make the team or they didn't get to play. Like, it's just how it works. And so, you know, this is something that I think is, and this isn't man or woman, but masculine and feminine energy. And feminine energy is very powerful because it actually gets you to connect with your feelings. How does this feel? What do I sense? Like, it's very interpretive, and it's a incredibly important thing, especially in the arts. But there is a time for masculine energy, and masculine energy is, it doesn't matter how I feel. I simply have to do what needs doing. And if you're too in your masculine, which I have been before, you get totally disconnected and you're like numb in your body, and you miss things all the time from a sensitivity point. You're careless, you have less empathy, there's less compassion, there's all this stuff, even for yourself. I'm not just talking about others. You have less compassion for yourself. You beat yourself up. You'll work when you're hurt, which can be good, but also can be detrimental. But there is a time and a place for masculine energy. There's also a time, like, I've seen people with too much feminine energy, and like, it's problematic, man. Like, they're just like, they get depressed. They don't feel like doing things. They end up going to things like drinking and drugs and all sorts of, like, video games and just things that feel good. And they have huge avoidance strategies. And I've definitely fallen into this one too. I've done it. But it's interesting because there is like this confidence. Confidence lives a little bit in the masculine. In that respect, like, maybe it needs a little bit of both energies, but it needs some masculine energy. There needs to be a part of you that can perform whether it feels good or not. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe there's an element where it needs the feminine. I haven't really investigated that yet, but right now what's kind of dawning on me is there's a if you only listen to your feelings, you'll never get what you want in life. I can guarantee, there's one thing I can guarantee in life, and this is a hard, fast rule. If you run your life by how you feel alone, and it's always the feeling is the highest thing, you will fail at life in so many ways. You will not be accountable. You will not be reliable. You will not be dependable. You will not keep your word. You can't be moral. You can't be ethical. None of that. Because morals and ethics and principles and standards and all of that stuff live beyond feeling. And feeling is actually one of the things that usually causes us to do the most destructive things in the world. But feeling is life, and without feeling, life isn't worth living. So you have to feel. And if you get so disconnected from your emotions and you live in the let's just get it done and I'm just going to do this, you become robotic and you become empty in an entirely different way. And you might succeed in the material world, but you will be vacant internally. So just to bring it back around, because like I feel like if anybody thinks I slammed feminine energy, I didn't, because feminine energy is what fills you. It's what it's the space inside that gets filled.
Creative force.
You need it. But for the external to work, you have to have the masculine energy. And you need both, but there's a time and a place to listen to each. And what I find is when I struggle with my confidence and I have the doubt, I'm usually in the feminine energy. I'm in that kind of like emotion. I'm like, oh man, that hurt, and feel that wound, and the time I got bullied, and I'm sensitive to that. Mm-hmm. And there's a time and a place where that is okay to check in with and like see, okay, where are you at? Because it can heal you and you can work out some things and you can process some things. But then there needs to be a time where you kind of go, okay, I've spent enough time inside investigating this. I need to just do the thing I need to do and put the feeling aside for the time being. Okay, one last thing, Evan. And I said this on a previous podcast. I said, something I always try to encourage people to do, because this is one thing that I did learn was helpful for me, because I'm actually such a sensitive guy. I live more in the feminine probably than I do in the masculine energy. But it's like I had to learn to do the thing and deal with my feelings later. And where I saw like my brothers and my father fail was that they would do the thing, but then not go to the feeling later. And, they all in their own journeys have worked that out. But I did see many men, and not just them, I saw many men in my life kind of do that. And what I saw was the consequence of that is because then the feeling comes up later when you're not in action and you don't know how to deal with it. So you'll do something like you'll drink, or you'll do some type of distraction to be able to manage whatever it is that has come up, because feeling tends to come up. Now, look, I'm just making my own opinion here, but I find that feeling tends to come up when you stop action and you get a moment to stand still. That's the moments, like when you get done with work and you come home, that's when you start to get confronted with your feelings. But when you're at work and you're busy and you're doing your task or whatever like at work means for you, that's where you're very much like, I'm just doing my thing. I don't think about what I'm feeling. So, there's probably an element of confidence. Like maybe I'm only talking about it in the external world, and that's why you need to put your feelings aside. Because maybe in the internal world, it works a little bit differently, but I don't know if we look at confidence that way. But I do think that external confidence lives in the ability to manage and deal with and remain in action despite how you feel.
Yeah, I think it's in many ways, like I've heard it described as like, the masculine and feminine, talking about his energies is, the feminine is like the creative force. It's kind of chaos, and that the masculine energy is actually like a container. It's like it helps to contain the energy. Right? That energy is life and it's good, but it's like if it's just whoosh, everywhere. And so the masculine is the container for it in many ways. So it's like if you have like there's the creative muse, and then which is the feminine, and then you have the art form, the discipline, the craft. That's the masculine. It's the channel for it. right? And it's like, okay, we're not just doing anything with this. We're going to channel it this way, right? We're going to direct it over here, right? And you know, and I think that they go together, you know, it's, and something that a thought that was going through my head with what you were saying is, as far as feelings go and how you're feeling about whatever it is, it's almost a sense of don't waste that emotional energy on this. Right? This is not the right place to put your heart. Don't put your heart in this shit that's all that you've put surrounding the thing. Right? Don't put your feelings into there, and put the feelings into the thing. Right? Put the appropriate feeling into the thing that you're doing. And I mean, again, I'll go back to acting. Is like acting is a perfect embodiment of how the emotions come along with it, right? It's like, okay, you have this thing to do, there's this scene, and you got to talk to this person, and the emotions are fueling what the things that are happening, the doings that are occurring. Right? The thing that has to get done, and the emotions are part of it. Right? It's just, and I mean, at least how I like to act is very, you know, I don't always know exactly what that emotion is going to be, but they help to drive it. They help to drive the whole scene. They help to drive the whole play. They help to drive the whole story. Right? So instead of placing all of my emotions into, oh, who's watching the scene right now, who's in the audience, you know, oh, things didn't go so well, or this thing didn't go how I wanted it to the last time I performed this, or whatever, all of this shit, that's you're putting your heart in the wrong place. You're putting that emotional energy in the wrong place. Put the emotional energy into the thing, right? Accept the feelings that you have around the thing. She's like, okay, that's just how I'm feeling right now, but then fucking get on with it. Right? And don't waste that energy on that stuff. Get present. Do the thing that needs to be done right now. And then you can really do the thing. Right? And then it's like, you know, confidence, because, and I know this from acting as well, is that like when I'm doing it well, like I don't have time to think about whether I feel confident or not about what I'm doing. Like this thing is just happening. Right? And I don't have, like, I'm so connected and invested, and my whole awareness is so absorbed in the thing that I'm doing that there's no space for me to have those thoughts, you know, which have happened many times when I've been performing, where I'm just like, oh, how did that, I don't know. Is this going okay? I don't feel, you know, it's like, am I going after my objective hard enough? Oh no, I should have ramped my stakes up, right? Like all of this kind of bullshit that actors say to themselves while they're in the middle of performance. It's like, this is no good. Like they're like that, all of that energy being poured into that thing, it's not helping you whatsoever. Right? Just connect, listen, get involved in the thing that's happening right now. And you won't have time to worry about all of that shit, because you'll be too busy being fucking amazing. And people will just be like, oh, holy shit. And for a little while at the start, it wasn't going so well, but then suddenly it was just like, bam, it just took off. And it's like, he's like, yeah, what happened? And it's like, oh yeah, it's because I just started responding. I started just doing what I needed to do right in front of me. And all of the emotional energy came along with me. You know, it just was given the right channel. Yeah.
I know that we're probably getting close to the end here. I was thinking, you know, before we do wrap it up, I like this interpretation of the masculine being a kind of container or a focused kind of direction of energy. Whereas like the feminine is kind of that energy. It's like it is the energy in a sense that you need to the emotion, because it's like something you're going to drive somewhere. And I have seen this, with myself, when my emotions are taking me everywhere. It's like, oh, I need to do this and I need to do that. And it's like overwhelm and just, it's too much. And, and it just needs to be focused, and it needs to be simplified, and it needs to be directed. And, it really is not very fun when you're doing something that you don't care about and you have no emotion about. So I think it's interesting with confidence, because when you're doing something that you don't care about, it's kind of easy to just be like, yeah, I don't care. Whatever happens, happens. And you kind of let go. And then you seem like, hey, you're really confident. I used to notice this, and I know a lot of guys have had this, at least I'm sure women have too, but I've only heard from the guys on this one. But like, you talking to somebody and you're like really into them, and all of a sudden you sound like an absolute idiot. And you're just saying dumb stuff, and you're like, oh my God, like, what is happening to me? I'm an idiot all of a sudden, and I'm embarrassing myself. And it's because you like decided you like them, and whatever, you're vibing, you're interested, and and maybe you want them to like you, and you're trying to control for something you can't really control for, because wanting them to like you is not why they're going to like you. You need to just, in a sense, you need to be in your boots. You need to like relax, and then they'll like you being in your own zone, but all of a sudden you're not, and then they don't. And so then it's like, well, it's hard to date somebody that I actually like, because all of a sudden I start acting like a fool, right? And at least, this is something that guys would go through a lot, I've noticed, and especially in the dating world. And I'm sure this happens for people in all sorts of things with auditions. Maybe there's this audition you're going for, and you're an actor, and you're like, man, I really want this part. And all of a sudden it's like, what the fuck? I can't act anymore. And like all of a sudden, like rehearsals are great. And now all of a sudden, like and the thing is the more intelligent you become, and the more aware you become, and the more conscious you become, the more amplified this is. Because there are people who are totally, they're just unaware. They're like not daft, but they're like oblivious. They're unconscious. They're unaware. And they're like, well, that felt great. And it's like, yeah, but it sucked. But they think it was good. And it was like, yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the person that actually like can do something well, but then they stumble when they get on the moment, and they can't perform under the pressure, and it's like, something about that is interesting, because I'm thinking about when I've been in front of somebody who I've wanted to, like, I like, and I start talking like a fool, and, it's this like boyish thing I've done before. And it's like, when it doesn't work, it's because I'm trying to control for something that I can't control, and I'm thinking about something I don't need to be thinking about. And when it does work, it's just like, I like this person, but I'm talking to this person, and they're a person, and I'm a person, and we're talking, and, and I almost have to just kind of be like, look, don't worry about anything right now. Just talk to this person. Like your only job here is to talk to them. They might not like what you have to say, whatever, but this is the goal. And all of a sudden I relax, and I make them laugh, and I'm funny, and all of a sudden, we're vibing, and things are good, and it's like, oh, this feels great. And it feels so good because like I'm into them, and then maybe you find out they're into you, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is magical, right? But it never would have happened if you didn't just let yourself do the thing you got to do. We have a talk actually way back. You keep the main thing the main thing.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like that's one of these things about confidence. Keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
Don't get too lost in the in all the other things. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just a thought I had. I wanted to share. Anyway, you want to tell us about this beer?
Yeah. So we're drinking from a nice local craft brewery around here called the 101 Brew House and Distillery. I always forget that they do their own distilling too. And we're drinking their Shingle Roof Hefeweizen, limited release, it says. And, you know, I just saw it and I just went, you know what? I feel like I haven't had a hef in a long time. And that was what drew me to it. So I've been enjoying it. It has been getting consumed with much ease.
It's nice. It's I find it robust. You know, I find it to be poignant. I don't know. Like it's kind of like poignant. Like it's just like the taste, the flavors. They're like poignant. It's like they kind of like. It's not. Well, I find it's going down nice, but I also find it's strong and flavorful. Mm-hmm. You know, but like in a way where it's like I need to just slow it down and take my time a little. It's like I'm liking it, but also it's like it's a mouthful.
It is.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But anyway, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying that it has a distinct kind of flavor quality to it that I would say makes me stop and enjoy it a little bit. More than almost more than I want to. Like, it's like I want to drink it quicker. But at the same time, I'm like, nah, I don't want to drink it. You know, I'm conflicted. It's conflicting me. It's great. I think that's my best beer review ever.
I've never seen you conflicted about a beer before, so I'll take that as a win. Yeah. Well, I suppose it's time for some closing comments. We've been going for a good stretch here. And I jotted something down here because I didn't want to forget about this. And, you know, coming into this conversation, talking about confidence, and, you know, I don't know, we never know where these conversations are going to go exactly. You know, sometimes we might have a couple of little points that we might be coming in with, but otherwise most of these conversations are pretty mysterious to us as far as what's going to happen and what's going to come out. And coming in, I thought, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll do a conversation that's about, like, you know, how to find your confidence and why do we lose our confidence and things. And we did touch on some things like that, but there was a lot of elements in here that were quite unexpected. And this thing occurred to me where it's like, you know, if I'm ever in a conversation with somebody and they say that they've lost their confidence about something or just in general, that they've lost their confidence, I'm tempted to say good. Not because, you know, out of some sense of like, well, you had too high of an opinion about yourself or something, but because it's good. It's good to go through that. I think it's good to have your confidence shaken, because that's the only path that you begin to find a real sense of really trusting yourself, and, you know, not just having fair weather confidence, like you said, right? Like that you've been through some pressure, you've had some challenge, and that shook your confidence up. It's like, good. Now let's find how you find your way back to it is going to be incredible, right? Because you're going to come back to confidence from an entirely new place. And we didn't get too much into this, but I think it really does come to this thing of like, okay, so what's this all really about for you? Right? I think that that's a huge part of that thing that again is because there's some part of me that's telling me that like there is something that's beyond confidence, and this part of the conversation that's about when you just get really present and focused, that like confidence isn't even it's a nonsensical kind of concept to even enter into the fray, because when you're doing the thing that doesn't, there's no sense of confidence in the whole thing. Confidence is some sort of, I don't know, premeditated thing. I don't know. There's that, like, you know, maybe there's a lot more to this conversation to be explored perhaps, but I think that an aspect of it is like, sometimes when your confidence is shaken, you have to really start asking yourself some questions about what it is that you're doing and what it's really all about. And when you really start to know what it's all about for you, then it's like, okay, well then this is just what I'm doing. And there's a deep confidence that comes with that. It's not necessarily a confidence in results or what you're going to get out of it, but it's a confidence in the thing that you're doing and why you're doing it. And it doesn't matter what comes out of it, because this is what I'm doing. Right. And that's like a confidence revolution that happens within you. Right. So if you had your confidence shaken, good, explore that, find out what that's telling you. Right. And yeah, know your purpose, accept your feelings, and do what you need to do.
Well, that was good. It's hard for me to wrap up now, man. Okay, I agree. I think there's something interesting about that. I was thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, confidence has been so much wrapped up in results for me. I'm like, I got the result, so I'm confident because I keep getting the result. And then all of a sudden I'm not getting the results. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not confident anymore. And it's like, well, I do think results matter. I do think there's a place for that in certain ways. And there's certain things where we need to be proficient and we need to get results. But actually, I'm thinking about confidence and how I built confidence in the first place. And in the early stages of anything, you tend to be a little more humble, I think. And I definitely was, where it was like, yeah, I just want to do the thing well. So I'm doing the thing as well as I can. And then pretty soon you get pretty proficient at it because practice, and you get better at it, and you put an effort into it, and you do the extra little things that you need to do. And then, all of a sudden you're like, hey, like I'm pretty good at this, and I tend to get results with it. And I think, it's interesting because maybe confidence gets shaken because you start getting results from something you get good at, and then you start attributing your confidence to the results, and you flip it and you stop making it about, I'm doing the thing I'm doing. And so, I think that this is a good insight, Evan. I think it's a good insight. I'm going to walk away and what I'm going to ponder and work through is, there are a lot of things that I can do that I don't always know if I can get the result for, but I can do them well. But I don't control the result. And I'm thinking about like when I'm talking to the girl and I start being boyish and I start fumbling my words and saying dumb stuff, like it was usually because I'm like trying to control for her liking me, which I just really can't do. But if I just talk to her and I just pay attention and I listen and I respond, I can do that pretty well, actually. And then all of a sudden it works, and I'm like, well, how is this different than anything else in life? Why don't you just relax and do the thing, and you can do it pretty well. I can talk to a person. I can listen. It's like acting too, man. I can listen. I can say some stuff, and then all of a sudden you're feeling something and emotions coming out, in the acting, and all of a sudden everyone's like, wow, how'd that happen? You're like, yeah, I was just saying some words, and all of a sudden they started meaning something, and it's like you said. So it's interesting, man. We've explored a lot of territory in the realm of confidence, and I definitely feel like this is one that I've walked away with having a lot more clarity and a lot more understanding on how to navigate this subject in my life, which is an important subject. I think it's vital. I actually do think that a sense of confidence, whether confidence is real or whatever, but the sense that I can do this, I believe in myself, I have options, I trust, and that's such an important thing in life. You really just, there's no underrating it. Like it can't be overrated. It's such an important thing. Like confidence will get things in this world for you. It will make your experience smoother and better. There's so many pluses, and there's a reason why we're after it. But I don't think we understand it. I think it's like the way that you and I always harp on these screenwriting book writers. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them where they're like, someone who writes about a movie, and they're like, they did this in the movie, and that's how, and it's like, no, they didn't. You just interpreted that and then made it into a technique and tried to tell people to do it. Like, they did it. It evolved from something. And then, because I've seen writers go out and try and do the technique, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't consistently. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work. And don't get me wrong, there are kind of what you can look at as techniques, and they kind of work, but I don't want to get too far off the topic here, but it's like they can kind of work. They are effective, and it is interesting to understand them. But to some degree, you have to let things be. You just have to let the characters talk, and you have to let them take actions, and you have to let it unfold. And if you try to put too much of this stuff on, it becomes contrived, and it robs it, and all of a sudden it's weird, and it feels shallow and empty, and just, it's not right. So I think confidence is kind of like this. It's like, you can't really put it on. You gotta let it come out of you. Almost like you have to trust that it is there if you were to relax and let it come out. And so instead of trying to paint on confidence or dress up in it, I would say, let it come out of you and trust that if you do the thing fully, honestly, with focus and pure intent, that you will find yourself in confidence.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.